in the modern history of the British royal family. The claim at the centre of this storm is that Meghan Markle's pregnancies with both Archie and Lilibet were not biological, and that the evidence of independent investigation is now considered legally, including alleged testimony from 3 unnamed medical professionals.
The palace has gone completely silent, not the kind of quiet that comes before a press release or a carefully worded statement from a communications team. This is the silence of a machine that has already made up its mind. A silence so deliberate, so calculated, that insiders say it is louder than anything the royal family has ever said publicly. And at the center of it all, 2 children's names, 2 royal titles, and a set of documents that Meghan and Harry have so far refused, or perhaps are unable, to produce. Right now, as you are watching this, a constitutional countdown is ticking. Deadlines have passed. Subpoenas have been served. Court orders have been signed. And sources close to the palace confirm that Prince William already has a draft deprivation order sitting on his desk, unsigned, waiting. Waiting for what? That is exactly what we are going to walk you through today, step by step, document by document, date by date. Because this is not a rumor. This is not tabloid gossip recycled for clicks. This is a carefully constructed legal, constitutional, and commercial crisis that has been quietly building for years, and it is now exploding into the open in ways that could permanently alter the British monarchy, the Sussex brand, and the futures of 2 young children who had absolutely no say in any of it. Stay with us, because what you are about to hear will change everything you thought you knew about this story. The document that started everything. Let's go back to the very beginning. Not 2020, not the Oprah interview, not even the wedding. Go back further. Go back to a single line in a palace press bulletin. A line so seemingly insignificant that most journalists read right past it. A line that, 7 years later, has become the foundation of what some constitutional lawyers are now calling the most consequential succession dispute since the early 1800s. The bulletin announced the birth of Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor.
In his newly obtained birth certificate, it shows Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor arrived May 6th.
And buried in the 3rd line was this phrase, born for their Royal Highnesses, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Born for, not born to. Not the customary phrasing used by Buckingham Palace since the reign of Queen Victoria. Not the language enshrined in centuries of royal birth announcements. Not the wording that appears in every legal framework touching the line of succession. Not the phrasing that had accompanied the announcements of Prince William, Prince Harry, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. Every royal birth, without exception, for over 100 years. Born for. And here is what makes this even more remarkable. The draft was flagged. An editor at the government news network saw it, noted the unusual preposition, and sent the document back for correction. It was returned to them unchanged. And so, 94 minutes after that internal query was raised and dismissed, those 2 words went out to the world, without the signatures of any royal household physician, without explanation, with nothing more than a press officer's verbal assurance that it was simply modern phrasing. Now think about that for a moment. Really sit with it. Every royal birth announcement before Archie's had been signed by at least 2 attending royal physicians. It was not merely tradition, it was protocol, tied directly to the legal verification of the line of succession. A future king or queen must be certifiably, documentably born of the body of their royal parent. That is not sentiment. That is constitutional law, rooted in the Act of Settlement of 1701.
To the tumultuous 17th century and discover how the Act of Settlement of 1701 transformed the British monarchy from chaos to continuity.
A statute that has governed royal succession for over 3 centuries, and that nobody in the palace would casually override without reason. So here is the first question we need to ask, and we want you to genuinely consider this. Was that phrasing a careless error? A modern linguistic update, as palace communications claimed? Or was it the first deliberate crack in a narrative that has now completely collapsed? Because as you are about to see, this was not the last time unusual language would appear in documents surrounding these children's births. It was only the first, because here is what we know. The same week that birth bulletin was released, Portland Hospital security logs recorded something unusual. The private lift serving the L wing, the wing designated for high-security, high-profile deliveries, moved twice during the critical window. Both swipe entries were registered to a staff ID logged as Douglas J. Neither entry matched the credentials of the two obstetricians later named in press reports as attending the birth, and the CCTV footage covering that 4-hour window? Gone, erased by what hospital records describe only as a server fault. 2 theater nurses signed off at 9:03 that evening. Neither of them, when later interviewed as part of background checks, recalled seeing a single member of the Royal Household Medical Unit, the team that is mandatory at every royal birth. Let that sink in. Harry's slip and what it revealed. On camera from Windsor Stables, Prince Harry gave his statement to the press following Archie's birth.
Yes, I'm very excited to announce that Meghan and myself had a baby boy early this morning, a very healthy boy.
It was warm. It was emotional. He looked like a proud new father. But in that footage, replayed over 5 million times since it resurfaced, Harry made a comment that stopped researchers cold. He said, "The baby has changed so much in the last 2 weeks." A press officer standing beside him made an immediate, sharp, cutting gesture. Harry visibly corrected himself. 2 days, he said. 2 days. Now, new parents misspeak. Exhaustion does strange things to language. But the correction was so fast, so physically prompted, that it lodged in the public consciousness like a splinter, especially when placed alongside everything else. Because just days after Archie's birth, the Sussex legal office filed a request to amend his birth certificate. The name Rachel Meghan was deleted, leaving only Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Sussex. Civil servants at the General Register Office lodged formal objections. Post-registration edits of this kind are strongly discouraged. They were overridden. The Palace Private Secretary's memo described the change as a stylistic standardization. 10 days later, a second memo from Sussex House asked a question that had never been raised before in the modern monarchy. Could the phrase "born for" on the birth bulletin be retrospectively corrected to "born to"? The answer was no. The register, officials explained, cannot be rewritten twice. Why would anyone ask that question, unless they understood at some level that the original wording created a problem? Lilibet's arrival and the California paper trail. 2 years later, with the Sussex family now settled in Montecito, California, a second child was announced. Lilibet Diana, Mountbatten, Windsor.
The Duke and Duchess of Sussex announced the birth of a baby daughter, and they've named her Lilibet Diana. She was born on Friday in California.
Born, the public was told, on June 4, 2021, at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. But here is where the paper trail becomes deeply, deeply troubling. Records subsequently obtained through court proceedings show that on April 23, 2021, 12 days before Lilibet's reported birth, a company called Secure Trans Courier raised a job order for the relocation of cryogenic medical material. The route, LAX, to Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. The scheduled delivery date, April 30th. The client name on the order was redacted. Billing was routed to a Delaware LLC called AR Orchid Holdings. A Gulfstream GIV filed a flight plan from Van Nuys to Santa Barbara. The passenger manifest listed 2 neonatal nurses and a California-licensed obstetrician later identified as Dr. Melissa Drake. Secure Trans met the aircraft on arrival. Chain of custody slips matched the April 23rd order exactly. 12 days later, on June 4th, Lilibet Diana was announced to the world. Dr. Drake closed her practice 2 weeks after Lilibet's birth. She declined all media requests. Every attempt to access her patient roster has been blocked by HIPAA, and a baptism certificate template, delivered to media outlets bearing the Sussex's family seal, was later examined by document analysts. The watermark embedded in the template was dated 2024, 3 years after the ceremony it supposedly documented. When these anomalies became public, Sussex PR offered an explanation. Lilibet had been baptized in a private ceremony at the family's Montecito home, officiated by the Archbishop of Canterbury under a special license. The Archbishop's office issued a one-line denial. No such license had ever been issued for a ceremony in California. Lambeth Palace archivists subsequently confirmed something even more damaging. There is no baptism entry for Lilibet in Lambeth Register Volume 169. Archie's entry exists, but only as a courtesy annotation, without the customary handwritten signatures of attending bishops or sponsors. Without a recognized Anglican baptism, constitutional scholars warn, the children cannot lawfully remain in the line of succession if questions about their birth legitimacy remain unresolved. The palace moves, and the sealed memorandum. Now here is where the story accelerates, from a slow-burn controversy into a full constitutional emergency. A sealed memorandum left the Privy Purse Office bearing the signatures of King Charles III and the Lord Chamberlain. Its contents, when summarized by sources familiar with the document, were devastating in their precision. The memorandum cited Section 3 of the Titles Deprivation Act of 1917. It froze the public use of the styles Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, and its rationale, contained in a single carefully worded sentence, cited unresolved irregularities in statutory and ecclesiastical records, and invoked a phrase from the Act of Settlement of 1701, born of the body. 3 specific anomalies were named in the document: Archie's amended Portland Hospital birth certificate, Lilibet's Santa Barbara County record, and the missing Church of England baptism entries for both children. Let us be absolutely clear about what this means. This was not a tabloid rumor. This was not a social media conspiracy theory. This was an official palace document, signed at the highest level of royal administration, formally acknowledging that questions about the children's births had reached a threshold requiring constitutional action. Prince William then convened what insiders are calling the Internal Verification Review, a 6-person committee of privy councillors and constitutional lawyers. That committee issued a 64-point request for particulars to the Sussex legal team. The document demanded certified labor ward files, physician licenses, payment ledgers, email chains, and any non-disclosure agreements that could confirm or refute the use of a gestational carrier between 2018 and 2021. The letter contained one particularly unsparing clause: documents containing euphemisms such as "born for" or lacking original signatures will be rejected. The deadlines were brutal in their specificity: March 16th for medical files, March 18th for sacramental proof from Sacramento, March 24th for all emails, invoices, and NDAs referencing surrogacy. And the Cabinet Office had already drafted a contingency brief to Parliament. The draft activated a full deprivation pathway, language not deployed since German dukes were stripped of their British titles in 1917, with one significant modern addition: a commercial clause barring any post-deprivation merchandising of royal titles. The courts close in. While the palace moved through constitutional channels, the courts were moving simultaneously, and with even less mercy. On March 15th, Lady Colin Campbell filed a subpoena in the United States District Court for the Southern District of Florida, seeking billing data from Pacific Surrogacy Center. Judge Teresa Osborne granted accelerated discovery, compelling the clinic to produce records within 20 days. Hours later, investigative biographer Tom Bauer lodged a 97-page evidentiary bundle in the High Court. The document is now filed under reference QC 260319. The key anomalies flagged in Bauer's bundle read like a prosecutor's opening statement: a 4-hour gap in Portland Hospital's electronic swipe log on May 6, 2019. A Santa Barbara invoice issued to AR Orchid LLC dated 12 days before Lilibet's reported birth. A baptism certificate template watermarked 2024. 4 expert affidavits accompanying the papers. 2 obstetricians highlighting inconsistent bump weight distribution in publicly available footage. A forensic linguist citing the statistical rarity of the phrase "born for" in United Kingdom birth notices. And a canon law scholar on the mandatory requirements of Lambeth baptismal registers. Bauer's lawyers then struck from another angle entirely, deploying 28 U.S.C. Section 1782, a federal statute allowing American courts to compel evidence for use in foreign proceedings. They secured subpoenas requiring Pacific Surrogacy Center to hand over billing ledgers, Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital to produce its labor and delivery server image, and secure transcourier to provide any chain of custody file linked to biological material moved in May 2021. Judge Osborne set a compliance date of March 24th with $25,000 daily fines for non-compliance. Now here is where this becomes critical for anyone watching, and we want to make sure you understand exactly what happened here, because it changes everything about the Sussex legal position. Meghan made a legal error that handed her opponents everything they needed. She filed a notice of serious harm against Lady Colin Campbell, a formal legal action asserting that Lady C's surrogacy allegations had caused her significant reputational damage. It was, on its face, an aggressive move designed to silence a persistent critic. But under civil procedure rules, that single filing destroyed the Sussex team's ability to withhold any documents. The principle is ancient and unforgiving. Any claimant who alleges defamation must surrender every document, helpful or harmful, that touches the allegation in any way. You cannot claim you were falsely smeared, and then refuse to produce the evidence that would prove it. Master Whitcomb confirmed the point formally on March 11th. Because Meghan explicitly claimed she was smeared as a fake mother, every obstetric record, every neonatal form, every sacramental register entry, every email referencing a gestational carrier, and every NDA signed between 2018 and 2021 became plainly relevant to the proceedings. She effectively subpoenaed herself. By filing that notice, she opened a door she cannot now close, in a jurisdiction she cannot now escape, under a timetable she cannot now negotiate. Legal analysts covering the case say it is one of the most consequential procedural missteps they have seen in a high-profile British civil action in decades. The commercial catastrophe. Let's talk about what this is costing, because the Sussex brand was not built on goodwill alone. It was built on a very specific commercial architecture, the cache of royal titles, guaranteed media oxygen, and the sympathy capital generated by the Oprah interview. Brand analysts, as recently as 2 years ago, valued Sussex Global at £150 million. Every contract, every deal, every partnership was priced on that number. That number is now evaporating. Netflix applied its material reputational event clause, pausing the £75 million drawdown for the second season of Harry and Meghan. The leaked Netflix term, Sheet Annex G12, defines such an event explicitly as loss or suspension of HRH, or a place in the succession. Internal Slack logs show the platform's non-fiction unit debating whether to restructure Season 2 around a generic celebrity couple, because back-end participation only accrues to productions tied to the original royal access pitch. If that restructuring happens, the Sussex back-end participation vanishes entirely. Spotify has removed Princess Lilibet merchandise from its Archetypes store. Penguin Random House placed a £5 million advance for Harry's planned memoir sequel into escrow. BetterUp's keynote contract automatically diverts Harry's £250,000 per appearance fee to charity if his royal styling changes. American Riviera Orchard, Meghan's lifestyle startup, launched in February, printed Princess Lilibet of Sussex on 12,000 jam labels, now sitting in a fulfillment warehouse in Nevada. The fulfillment partner refuses to ship until a legal opinion arrives. Each batch has a 90-day shelf life. The first expiration date is May 1st. The very morning William plans to close the IVR file. The U.S. Patent Office has issued a non-final refusal on Meghan's trademark for Princess Lilibet of Sussex, citing questioned legitimacy of the titular component. A Morgan Stanley note circulated to institutional clients on March 21st carried a single red sentence. Imminent loss of styling would derate the Sussex narrative premium to 0. An internal IVR risk memo leaked on March 19th lays out 3 scenarios with the clinical detachment of an actuarial table. Full compliance, every original document produced, would restore the titles and resurrect roughly £40 million in contract revenue. Partial compliance would freeze HRH status for 3 years and implode 40% of the Sussex deal sheet. Non-compliance would trigger full deprivation, wipe out 4/5 of existing contracts, and load the couple with clawbacks approaching £100 million. Inside Montecito, a spreadsheet labeled Heron FYN 153 shows cash at £6.8 million after the Netflix freeze, 9 months of current burn, Two aides resigned on March 17th after being asked to backdate pregnancy testimonials. The couple's financial advisor sent Harry a blunt note: "If tranche 3 stays frozen, we hit negative cash Q4." The Succession Integrity Bill. While the financial walls close in, the legislative machinery is also accelerating. Prince William's team circulated a draft Succession Integrity Bill on March 14th. It does 4 things that together represent the most significant restructuring of royal title law in over a century. First, it states that only descendants born of the body and baptized within the Church of England or a recognized communion remain in the line of succession. Second, it reserves the HRH designation to the monarch's children, and the heir apparent's children while they perform official duties. Third, it bars any person who loses a title from monetizing that title afterward, imposing a civil penalty of £2 million per breach on both the individual and any retailer that prints the wording. Fourth, and this is the part that should alarm anyone watching closely, it empowers the Crown Office to compel obstetric, sacramental, or genomic evidence in camera whenever doubt arises about a royal birth. 77 Conservative MPs have indicated support. Labour's frontbench has described it as routine modernization. The first reading is penciled for May 8th, but government whips will accelerate it to the Easter recess if Sussex disclosure stalls. The mechanism for title deprivation, should it come to that, is coldly mechanical and worth walking through carefully so you understand exactly what is at stake. The Privy Council drafts a report listing acts or defaults inconsistent with allegiance. The King signs an order in Council naming those to be deprived. Parliament is given 40 sitting days. If neither house prays against the order, it becomes law without a vote. Garter King of Arms erases the offending styles from all precedence rolls. Archie and Lilibet are minors, but precedent from 1919 shows the Crown can strip a child's title without appointing a guardian. The action, legally speaking, protects the succession. It does not punish the child. The Sussex response, and why it is failing. The Sussex response strategy, confirmed by multiple sources working under the internal code name Heron, a name that has since leaked to at least 3 newsrooms, rests on 3 pillars: delay, deflection, and threat. Delay by invoking HIPAA and GDPR conflicts to stall document release. Deflect by reframing the entire inquiry as racialized harassment. Threaten by dispatching warning letters to editors who repeat the surrogacy allegation. And here is where every single pillar collapses under examination. HIPAA does not bar Meghan from releasing her own medical charts. She is the patient. She can authorize disclosure at any time. GDPR is entirely irrelevant to American records. The documents being subpoenaed are held in California courts and California hospitals. European data protection law has no jurisdiction. The racial reframing lost traction almost immediately when the palace published George V's letters patent. The document made clear that Archie was treated exactly like every other great-grandchild prior to accession, regardless of background, regardless of parentage, regardless of anything other than his position in the line of succession. And the legal threats? They collapsed the moment Meghan filed her notice of serious harm. Discovery orders are already signed in 2 jurisdictions. Truth is an absolute defense, and proof is precisely what the complainants claim they possess. None of the delay tactics alter the calendar. The court timetable does not negotiate. The public turns. For years, a significant portion of the British public remained indifferent to the Sussex story. The drama felt distant, transatlantic, more entertainment than politics. Polls consistently showed large numbers of people who simply did not care about the internal dynamics of a family that had, by choice, relocated to California and was now primarily doing business with American streaming platforms and American publishers. It felt, to many ordinary Britons, like someone else's problem. That changed on a single evening, and it changed with brutal speed. ITV aired a 45-second montage during prime time. On the left side of the screen, Prince George's birth announcement, signed by 3 royal surgeons, their credentials clearly listed, their ink signatures plainly visible beneath the palace letterhead. On the right side of the screen, Archie's unsigned communicate, with its unusual prepositional phrase and its absent physicians. Side by side, same institution, same lineage, completely different standards of documentation. The montage ended with an on-screen question in bold white text. Would this pass your HR department? It was not an editorial opinion. It was not an accusation. It was simply a question, and it landed like a thunderclap. 10 million viewers watched live. The clip crossed 50 million social media impressions within 24 hours. People who had never followed a single royal story began sharing it with colleagues, with family, with friends who had equally never paid attention, because the question it posed was not really about royalty at all. It was about documentation. It was about standards. It was about whether the same rules that apply to everyone else also apply to the people who benefit most from the system. Those rules are designed to protect. A YouGov tracker that had shown 43% of Britain indifferent to the succession dispute on the morning of March 11th recorded that same category collapsing to just 9% by the evening of March 19th. That is a 34-point shift in public engagement in 8 days. Pollsters covering British politics say it is unprecedented outside of wartime. Even the Brexit referendum, the most divisive political event in modern British history, did not produce opinion movement at that velocity. A Savanta flash poll showed 67% of the British public in favor of temporary removal of the titles until certified proof is lodged. The hashtag Born of the Body trended every evening for 9 consecutive days, driven by TikTok explainers that were somehow packing centuries of constitutional law into 60 seconds. The most watched clip, 4 million views ahead of its nearest competitor, ended with a simple demand: show the paperwork, keep the prince, hide it, lose him. Republic UK, the anti-monarchy campaign group, booked 400 digital billboards across Britain for Holy Week. Black background, stark white text, one word: born. Each board linked to a polling QR code. Conservative whips report that constituency mail is running 4-1 in favor of suspension. Labour sees no political benefit in defending an American-based couple perceived to be monetizing grievances against the institution they left. The cross-party calculus now favors swift legislative resolution. The palace strategy and the symmetry of history. Behind the palace's curt public statements, a 4-point strategy is operating with quiet precision. First, neutralize emotion. Every communique references statutes, never personalities. This is a paperwork dispute, not a personal attack. The palace wants it framed exactly that way. Second, keep King Charles above the fray. William and Anne absorbed the public heat, allowing the monarch to step in later as an arbiter rather than a combatant. Charles has not issued a single public comment beyond the 59-word statement from Buckingham Palace. Their Majesties reaffirm the constitutional safeguards that protect the crown. Verification continues. No further comment. Third, accelerate verification privately, but leak steadily publicly. The palace wants the story to mature before Parliament reconvenes, so that deprivation, if it comes, looks inevitable rather than vindictive. Fourth, maintain momentum. Every missed Sussex deadline is followed within hours by a fresh procedural milestone. A subpoena served, a bill draft circulated, a cabinet brief released. The objective is to create a sense of ticking inevitability that no PR counteroffensive can outrun. Lobby journalists have noted a striking historical symmetry. In 2020, Harry and Meghan launched their media campaign with the language of moral exposure. We must tell our truth. In 2026, the palace is doing exactly the same thing, but instead of interviews and Netflix documentaries, it is using statutes, ledgers, and sworn affidavits. Every document either confirms or collapses the Sussex narrative. Every silence is publicly interpreted as confession. The couple who weaponized public opinion now need that same public to accept their account without documentation, and reputational trust, once spent, cannot be repurchased on demand. The exit ramp and why it is closing. Palace courtiers, speaking off the record to a small number of trusted journalists, have hinted at a narrow off-ramp, the only exit from this crisis that does not end in public deprivation. If the Sussex team delivers certified obstetric originals plus a sealed baptism letter from Lambeth before April 15th, the royal instrument of trust could be lifted quietly. The IVR disbanded. No deprivation, No bill, only an archived footnote. That window is closing by the day. Sussex advisors privately doubt that documents exist in the form required. Meghan could release personal medical scans, but without hospital certification, they are legally worthless. Signing fresh affidavits would invite perjury charges if later disproven. Pursuing court appeals is futile because the Act of Settlement operates under parliamentary supremacy, not judicial review. And so a rumor has settled inside Clarence House like a stone. William already has the deprivation draft on his desk, unsigned, waiting. What is missing is one of two envelopes. The first contains primary, unredacted, certified birth documentation that closes the question permanently. The second contains final proof of non-compliance, the last missed deadline, the last unanswered subpoena, that sends the matter straight to the Privy Council. Either envelope will arrive before summer. The choice belongs to Harry and Meghan alone. What happens next? The next immovable date on the calendar was March 24th, U.S. subpoena compliance. If Pacific Surrogacy Center produced a blank file, that negative would be delivered directly to the High Court. If the file exists and its contents are produced, they either close the question or explode it. Then comes April 30th, the IVR cutoff. Sources close to William insist he will not extend the deadline. He wants the matter resolved before trooping the color, so that the summer slate of royal engagements, the visible public face of the monarchy, proceeds without a constitutional cloud hanging over every photograph. If original, signed, unredacted documentation is not on his desk by the morning of May 1st, the Succession Integrity Bill enters Parliament. The Privy Council moves, and one stroke of the King's pen deletes two royal titles and collapses the commercial empire built upon them. The monarchy cannot permit a compromise that would read, 5 decades from now, as a footnote of doubt beside the accession of King George VII. The constitutional fuse now burning was lit not by a YouTube rumor, but by the wording of a single palace communiqué almost 7 years ago. Every anomaly since can be traced, step by step, to that first departure from precedent. Born for 2 words, 7 years. And now, an empire of ambiguity demanding a binary resolution. Here is the question we leave you with today. Not whether the surrogacy allegations are true, not whether the palace is acting out of constitutional duty or institutional vengeance, not even whether Harry and Meghan knew, all those years ago, that 2 carefully chosen words would one day bring everything crashing down. The question is simpler than all of that. If the documentation exists, if the birth records are certified, if the baptism entries are signed, if the hospital logs are complete, why has none of it been produced? Think about what you would do if someone accused you of something you knew was completely false and that you had the receipts to disprove. You would not delay. You would not invoke privacy laws. You would not reframe the allegation as racially motivated. You would simply produce the paperwork. You would hand it over immediately, gladly, publicly, because the documentation would be your most powerful weapon. Every day you withheld it would be a day the accusation grew stronger, not weaker. Every missed deadline would hand your opponents exactly the narrative they wanted. The Sussex team has had years, multiple jurisdictions, enormous legal resources, and a commercial empire worth hundreds of millions of pounds, providing every possible incentive to resolve this quickly. And yet the documents have not appeared. In 9 days, the British public shifted from 43% indifferent to 91% engaged. That is not tabloid hysteria. That is a population watching a constitutional process unfold in real time and asking the most reasonable question in the world. Show us the paperwork. The palace is asking the same thing. The courts are asking the same thing. Parliament is preparing to ask the same thing in formal session. And the press, from broadsheets to tabloids to international news wires, has now framed this not as a family dispute or a cultural war, but as a binary constitutional test with one correct answer and one correct outcome. Produce the records, or lose the titles. There is no negotiated middle ground. There is no sympathetic interview that changes the statutory requirements. There is no PR campaign that overrides a Privy Council order. There is no Oprah appearance that supersedes the Act of Settlement. And what makes this moment so historically extraordinary is that it was entirely avoidable. At any point in the last 7 years, a single certified document could have closed every line of inquiry permanently. One signed obstetric chart, one verified baptism entry, one unredacted hospital log bearing the name of a physician with a traceable license. The entire constitutional machinery now grinding toward deprivation would have stopped the moment any of those documents appeared. They have not appeared. The answer, whatever it turns out to be, will define not just the Sussex legacy, but the integrity of the succession itself for generations to come. Future constitutional scholars will teach this case. Future parliamentarians will cite this legislation. Future monarchs will be crowned against a legal backdrop shaped, in part, by what happens in the next 36 days, in 2 courtrooms, 1 palace committee room, and the quiet study where William sits with an unsigned document and waits. The clock is running without pause, and right now, the only people who can stop it, the only 2 people on Earth with that power, are the 2 people in Montecito who lit the fuse 7 years ago with 2 small words in a press bulletin that no one, at the time, thought to question. Subscribe now if you want to be here when the next envelope opens. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe the documents exist? Do you think they will be produced in time? We read everything, because this story is far from over, and the next chapter could arrive any day now.